Good morning, people. So I've been out sailing for the last week. Went up to Desolation Sound in British Columbia, and there was spent a lot of time jumping in and out of dinghies, and so it got me thinking about dinghy design. So while I was out there, I did come across a pretty interesting dinghy design. Let me just pull it up here. It was called a Portland Pudgy. So I actually got a set of lines for it right here. Let me see if I can quickly just find a photograph for you. And I thought it was a pretty interesting boat because it was quite is this fat little boat, and in particular what I liked about it was it was not an inflatable. It was a rigid hull boat, and it had a very round bow. I apologize for all the noise going on around me because everybody's up and about doing laundry and doing dishes and everything else. So anyhow. So I thought it'd be interesting to try and design one. So what I did do yesterday is I sat down and I started playing around with some cardboard, and I thought, let's try and come up with like a wooden version of the Portland Pudgy. Well, not exactly. I'm not trying to copy that boat. I'm trying to create something that kind of fits the same bill. So what I like about it is a very rounded bow because it gives you a lot of volume there. And many years ago I designed this little boat. So many years ago I was in Holland, in Enkhuizen, I think. There's a maritime museum there that is fantastic, and in that museum was this little boat that was intended for waterfowl hunting, I believe. So it was oak, and it was just 3 planks, these bulwark planks, a garboard, and then, well, I guess also a garboard and a binder and a bulwark plank is all it was made up of. And I was really intrigued by it, so I took a few photographs, very few. I think I even ran out to buy a fresh roll of film just to go shoot some stuff in that museum because it was kind of like my last day or something. But I only got a couple pictures, and when I came down to trying to recreate that boat, they were kind of lacking. I managed to find like one blurry photograph on the internet of the same boat in the museum. But it was about 12 feet long, probably about 4 or 5 foot beam. And so I managed to figure out a way to draw it and came up with this very, very rough cardboard model. But I like it. I have not yet built it, but one of these days I probably will. So it is intended for sailing, and it would have like a big lee board hanging off the side here. So on Dutch boats, this sort of really kicked in tumble home to this bulwark is a really common thing, and so lee boards would be fastened to those, and so as the boat's sailing, that lee board would heel over a little bit, and that lee board would do its job, and you'd have one on either side. So I sat down and I came up with this here, this sort of version of the Portland Pudgy. I've got some questions there. Is that a Dutch barge? It is very similar to a Dutch barge. So it's basically a scaled down version of a barge, yeah. And in Holland, I've got a book kicking around here of the boats from Holland. Yeah, there's a whole range of boats that are traditional, but characteristically they all have these very, very bluff bows, and I'll bet you anything it has everything to do with the cost of parking space and being able to maximize the amount of boat that you can fit into a given length. Anyhow, so I decided to try and model it, and so I've done this, and this was nominally successful. And I thought I would just go through this process again. We're going to redesign it a little bit and remodel it. So that's what we're going to do today. So what I thought I would do is I took these Portland Pudgy, had these measured drawings here. I guess that's to allow you to have as much These measured drawings are to allow you to sort of fit it onto your boat, I suppose, and create chocks and things like that. And they even have a measured shear drawing. It's not quite accurate though, as I was playing around with it. I will, by the way, comments. I'm not really well set up here for following along with comments. I can't even figure out how to get my own. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna bring up my own live feed here and turn on the live chat. And I will attempt to glance over and have a look at the comments as we go and try and answer those. Okay. The shape is based on cargo space. Yes, correct. I figured as much, yeah. Anyhow, so I've got this measured drawing. I've scaled it up as much as my printer will allow me to do it, because I'm a Luddite and I can never get things to work just right. So we're going to start with this, and we're going to do a little bit of design work right on this piece of paper, and then scale it up to the scale that I want to work at. So I'm going to work at the 1 inch to the foot scale. So I'm going to move the camera angle here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. Not sure, I don't know that that's going to have to do. I'll turn it up so you can see it every now and then, so it makes it a bit clearer. So I'm just going to work right on top of this because there's a few things I liked about this. I didn't do this on my first kick at the can. I just drew did a profile on this. I did a profile drawing on this piece of cardboard and a plan view on this piece of cardboard, and I started from there. So we're going to do that again, but I want to do a little bit of thinking on this here first. So to that end, I'm going to just draw in some lines that I'm going to call our planking. So nominally, these are the angles that are going to be the various components that we're going to work with. All right, so I'm using sort of the same half breadth as this. I'm not going to worry about anything else. I've got the angle of my bulwark, which is kind of coming up, which is, this is the bulwark here. So I'm just designing these angles right now. And I'm doing it completely by eye. The transom here, similarly, I think I did something on this which I thought worked out quite well, and I'll repeat that, I think. Wherein I basically took the same angle that this is at, applied it to the transom, but then as it rakes back, it changes that angle a little bit. It seemed to work out good. So that's all I really want off of that drawing. Now, I came up with an interesting way of scaling from that drawing, so I'll show you that. So we have, if I take my carpenter's ruler here, and I need to pick off a known dimension. It's got to go this way. So my carpenter's ruler has a 1 to 12 scale on one leg. So I'm going to pick off a known dimension, and this is like nothing on here is a nice round number, but over here I did find there's a 30.5 inches, so we'll call that as good enough. Oh, there's 32. There we go. 32. Perfect. Okay. So using that, I need to find 32 on my ruler. Just gonna grab a little bit of tape to make it easier for the camera to see what's going on. Is my audio okay? I mean, I could do nothing about it. I'm shooting with a phone here, so somebody in the comments give me a thumbs up if it's sounding all right. So if I look on my scale here, I've got 12, 24, 30, 32. Okay, thanks for the audio feedback. So there we go, that's 32 right there. Let me double check that I've got that on here. So if I take this and I'm going to put this square up. So I got to align my dividers here with the center of my hinge. Bring the square up to where it meets my stylus on the dividers. And now, if I can keep this from moving around, swing this up until my 32 mark meets the edge of my square. Okay, it's right there, whatever that is. Okay, now what that allows me to do is find any other dimension at the same scale. So here, if I want we'll just say the overall beam of the boat is this. If I want to scale that up to my 1:12, I do the same thing. I put my stylus on the hinge, I bring my square over, and then over here, there we go. That dimension right there is this beam of the boat at the 1 inch to the foot scale. Pretty cool, eh? So I'm going to just pick a few of these dimensions off and put it onto, using this method, to scale up from this drawing to the model size that I want to work at. So what I've got over here is a piece of cardstock. This is like literally the back of a pad. It's I don't know, 3/32 thick or something like that. Anyway, this is going to be the foundation of my model. So on this we'll create a shear, a profile, and a plan view, and then we're going to incorporate those, and that's going to become basically like a strong back for the model. So let's see. Let's just start with the shear height, I think. So if I go to I think I just want the shear height of midships, and I'm going to eyeball it fore and aft. I know it's on here, it's marked as 26.2 inches. So, so let's see. If I get don't want to change that angle. I'm working in a small, a small window of workbench space here for the sake of the video. Okay, we're going to call that the shear, and I'm also going to be wanting the beam. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit odd. I'm going to just mark that as another intersection. So we're going to ignore the keel. I'm just going to pick up that height amidships, which is approximate. You know what would be smart? Actually, let me double check this. I should do something to stabilize my square here. So my 32. That's my 32. Let's see. If I run my square right up to where it touches the hinge, put a piece of tape across the square here. There we go. So that'll tell me that I'm on the money. All right, what did I want? I wanted shear height. Now my initial gut thought is to try and make a portion of this just flat bottomed, but I think I'm gonna go with just a full bevel bottom on this one, because I did that on the first kick at the can. I'm just gonna repeat that because I don't want to reinvent the wheel too much from my original idea here, just because for the sake of keeping things happy on the video making process. Okay, so that is my approximate height midships. Okay, so over here I've got, like I said, a grid made, and I've marked out my overall length that I want. I'm going to squeeze this into 7.5 feet, and that's because the sailboat I was on, I paced off the swim grid, and it was 8 of my bare feet long. My bare feet are about 11 inches long, 10.5, 11. So I thought I would go with something that falls in that range. So 90 inches is pretty good. All right, now they got 26.2 coming off the bottom of the keel. We're just going to say 24 inches roughly is our overall height. So I'll just make it the same fore and aft for now. And I'm just going to play around with these sweeps here. I'm going to switch to pencil for the moment. I'll darken it in with pen when we get a little closer to something that looks right to me. So just eyeballing the shape of the shear. I think something that's in the, it's a pretty fat boat, maybe away with just one sweep. Sure, actually, and I know I want to bring my, I'm going to be kicking my the shape of the bow back a little bit as per my bulwark design. Okay, I like that. And now I want to just kind of eyeball, let's see, midships, where does he have this major chine? Grab that height. So based on that, and I'm just arbitrarily dropping these approximately midships. I might as well grab the lower one while I'm at it. Okay, I didn't draw that in here. This might be hard to scale up just because it's a very small dimension to drop onto this little setup I have here. Oh yeah, I can barely. This doesn't even clear the hinge. Oh well, I can get sort of close-ish. This is all, these dimensions are all a little bit arbitrary at the moment. I mean, it's just a very rough starting point. Okay, so Got those lines. Let's see. My bulwark. I'm gonna just eyeball it. Roughly like so. Kind of looks interesting to me. Can leave it kind of fat at the back end. Maybe I'll tip it up a little. Okay, and then lower down. Now this is where I've already sort of decided, I should probably do the keel first. Okay, now this is where I'm departing from that drawing because it runs very flat. This guy runs very flat in through here, and I'd like to give it a little more sweep, because one thing about a rowing boat, I mean, this will probably get used with an outboard, but it's never going to get up on plane. It's just too short and stumpy, and you're usually overloaded, right? So so I'm going to give a little more sweep to the bottom. So one of the reasons I'm kind of doing that is because one thing I observed everywhere we went, we were going into these areas that are very much the protected marine areas, and so you're not supposed to have a wake or anything like that, and so to that end you're not supposed to be creating a wake as you come in boating, which means you got to be running your boat at quite a low speed, and so it's not like you're getting up on plane anyway. Okay, so I'm going to sweep that up fairly high. And I'm learning from my last, let me think for a second. This is where I've just got to get into drawing. Let me see if I can bring you in a little bit. Let me shift things a little so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. I think I'm doing scale for the moment. Where's the camera? There we are. Okay. So I'm just playing around with the nose of the French curve here to try and come up with a shape that I think looks kind of okay. And one thing about my first model here is I felt it was just a bit too bluff, so I wanted to rake back a little bit more. I lay this on there. Yeah, I'm almost mimicking that completely the same. So the very front bit I don't mind being a bit bluff, but I want the rest of it to sort of sweep back a little bit harder. I might have to do this in a couple different steps because the sweep can't necessarily get the curve that I want in one shot. Okay, I like that. And then so I want to create some knuckles. Up here looks okay. Bring this down a hair and then sweeping to the back. I think we want to try and maintain sort of the same shape right through the transom. Okay, good. Now kicking back that shear, I'm just gonna arbitrarily call that good. Now one of the things I liked about this idea is I like the idea that the greatest beam of the boat is not at the shear. Because if you think about coming alongside a yacht and you got someone hanging on, clutching onto the gunnel with their fingers for stability if things are jumpy, the idea that you can't smash your fingers up, I think, is a great thing. So I quite like that. And so down here, this portion of the boat, which is going to be a bit stronger, takes the brunt of the blows. So that's kind of cool. The thing I don't like, though, is that once it's up on edge, if you're storing the dinghy on its beam, on the swim grid or something, the idea that water can collect in. So that's going completely against my preferences, which would be to have a freely draining boat. So I don't know what we'll do about that. Maybe we'll sacrifice and have just a couple of little scuppers in there that allow water to drain out. Yes, water will come in if things are a bit choppy, but I think that's not a big deal. All right, now I'm going to rake back my transom a little, and I'm arbitrarily giving it like 3 inches of rake. And so that's my start. I think that's good like that. I'm gonna give my bulwarks a little more meat aft. Sweep those down just a hair more. Okay, so that's done. Now I want to do the plan view, or half breadth. So let's see. This boat is 53 inches. We're gonna sort of normalize that number a little bit. 53.2. We'll kind of do this a bit by eye. I'll give myself, that's 48. And that's 6, so that's 54 right now. That'll be my center line. And so I want it to be a little bit less than that. Aim somewhere in the middle. Let's see, this guy's got a transom beam of 21.8 inches. So let's see what that looks like if we scale that off. Get our scale. I thought this would be kind of a fun exercise because one of the comments I get from people is they like the fact that I'm just kind of yammering away, talking, thinking out loud. That seems to appeal to people. So here we are, thinking out loud. Watch, this will be the one time I get killed in the analytics and nobody liked it. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Okay, so that in theory is our transom beam right there, as per the drawing, or the pudgy, which is, as I pointed out before, purely inspiration. We're not trying to copy that boat. All right, so the transom. And let's see, now I'm just going to get a bit sketchy. Greatest beam, roughly midships. We'll start with one picture and we'll have a look at it, decide. was much beamier on that one. Okay, I thought it worked out fine, so let's try that. There's a big difference in our shape right there. Like, I thought this shape was kind of, we're looking at this this shape right here right now. I'm not worrying about this. This is all going to be a function of how much that shape kicks in. Okay. Yeah, and I'm narrower on this one than that. I felt this was awfully fat, even though it mimics that boat quite a bit. And I don't necessarily have any intention of building this boat per se, so this is really just an experiment. Okay, now this, our length needs to be adjusted a little bit. Now there's a little bit of a parallax error that's going to happen. So I'm projecting, when I look at this line here, where it hits the transom rake, I'm projecting it up. And so that, in theory, that is our overall length this way. However, we have this curve to consider. And I can show you, let's see if we can, let me find a little stick and I'll show you how we can actually calculate what that real length is. Okay, so using this little stick, so here I'm going to stick it up at the bow. It's a bit stiff, so we'll have to walk it around the shape here. That's better. I'm just bending it around, and there. So this is our actual length. And if I lay it off on here, it comes right to our red transom line. So we call that expanding a shape. So we do this all the time in boat building, where, especially in lofting, where we need to find out what is this, how long is this actual curve if we flatten it out. If you're expanding a plank, you want to know how long this plank actually needs to be. You need to wrap a batten around there, mark off your ends, and then you can flatten it out. It shows you what it would look like on a piece of plywood. So and if you wanted to figure out the shape, you'd have to mark off station spacings onto your stick as you bend that around, and then those lengthen as you flatten them out, and you can pick up widths and things like that. Angles throw it all into a whole bunch of other pieces of complication, which we're not going to worry about right now. Okay, so this is all I need to get started. Maybe I should just quickly do, let's quickly do a cross section. So I think I just wung it last time. So just gonna pull it right over here. Use the square edge of the card. And our major beam. This. Okay, and I think I'm going to use this, the amount that this is kicked back as our, really different on the pudgy. You know what we'll do? We'll just grab the angle. Grab the angle off of here. Ooh, different image. guess if I grab that, there's that angle. Now I'll grab this angle. So I don't need to worry about scaling the angles, or rather, by using the angles, it should be scaling the sizes of everything else. And then I can find, come here to midships, that height there. There. Okay, so there's our cross section for what it's worth. I mean, this might be a terrible boat when you're done. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. But it's a great exercise, though, I'll say that much about it. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to start cutting some bits apart. So let's see, we'll start with this. Okay, transom rake. And now we're going to do the shear. There we go. So that's the shear of our boat. With all of our chine lines drawn in. Okay, now we're going to cut this out. Go for the curve before I free it. Checked any comments here in the last little while. See, okay, well, not a lot of comments. If you got something you want to ask, by all means, ask while I'm thinking about looking at the comments. I get into my head very easily and completely blank out everything that's going on around me. as my wife will attest. I might as well tell you all right now, I'm on vacation essentially, so I will be not posting necessarily with the greatest regularity throughout the rest of the summer. I'm going to try, but you know, I don't want to spend my whole vacation time down here in the workshop plugging away at the computer. I want to get out and do stuff. Notice my friend Ed's there in the comments. Hey Ed, how's it going? I'll see you later on this afternoon. We'll go down to one of the local bays, which in theory is swimmable when the tide comes in. I don't believe it. So I was out boating up in Desolation Sound. If you've never heard of it, it is quite a magical little place. It's if you look on a map of the BC coast, just north of Vancouver, or north of a town called Lund. Lund is sort of the front door to Desolation Sound. You get to Lund and you start motoring, and you know, within the next hour or so you're in Desolation Sound, and it's just a lot of little fjords. Some of them are quite shallow, some of them are quite deep, and the water temperature curiously gets really warm. So yeah, just a couple days ago I was swimming in ocean temperatures that were, oh, I don't know, what were they, 25 degrees Celsius, you know, so I don't know, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. The ocean was almost as warm as the lakes. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm just gonna try and fare this out a little bit. I used like some corrugated cardboard for this one, and that's kind of a pain to work with. It kind of collapses on you as you're working, right? And you certainly can't sand it. Not that this sands particularly well. But, all right, so one thing I just want to quickly do is I'm gonna throw a few lines on this side, the 1-inch intervals. Don't need them exactly, but can't hurt. So Tim asks, is this how you, this stupid little heart thing in my way here on my screen, is this how you take line drawings in this plans book and turn them into a scaled model? Yes and no. Tim, not really, Tim, not exactly, but it's not so different. I mean, I'm using a scale drawing as inspiration, not trying to copy it. So if I were doing it, if I were taking a lines drawing from a book, first of all, I would probably just try and make a copy of those drawings at the scale that I want, if possible, and photocopy them, and then essentially cut them apart and glue them onto cardstock. If I was going to do a card model, if I was going to be doing a solid wood model, I would just be using a profile drawing and a plan view drawing, gluing those onto a solid block of wood and starting from there. But you certainly could use this method. Okay, so now what I want to try and do is, here's where I'm breaking from what's expected. You would expect me to sort of take this flat thing and lay it on here and start building out from there. If I had drawn this shape as water lines, then that's what I would do. Let me quickly grab another model. Bear with me. Stare at my cup of coffee for a sec. Sorry, I'm afraid the model in question has disappeared on me somewhere around here. But if you go to Wooden Boat magazine, they have a plan to do a paper model of a cat's paw dinghy. And in that plan, you have a profile drawing, and then you make this a couple of water lines, I think. And it's all sort of done with finger joints where they all slip together. And then there's also a diagonal that goes into it, and a bunch of station lines. And the whole idea is that it kind of creates a 3D representation of what a lines drawing looks like. Now I'm doing something that's a little wackier. So what I'm trying to do is I've created this thing that is representing what I want this plank, this chine to look like here. I'm only going to do it with the major shape here, the major chine. The other one is going to be freeform, although I could do it with that too, but I can't visualize that very easily. If I were to do a lines drawing first, I could do that, but this is all about not necessarily having to draw everything out. This is about kind of designing on the fly. What we're doing here. Okay. So I'm using cyanoacrylate glue. I like using Starbond. Now Starbond gives me this stuff for free, and I've got an affiliate link, so you can buy the stuff with a bit of a discount. There's a link in the comments. But I do like it. It's not just that they give it to me for free. It's not the only reason I use it. It actually does work really nicely compared to other CA glues, and it comes in a variety of colors. You can get black, you can get brown, different viscosities. And so you can help me out a little bit by using that affiliate link, because I get a couple bucks, and let Starbond in particular know that you're paying attention to me. And that's the more helpful thing. I'm trying to drum up sponsorship for this channel. Not that I want to flog stuff for other people, but I'd like to be able to make these videos. I keep making these videos, but they take so much time that there's a significant cost in time to making them. It'd be nice to be able to pay the rent with that time. Okay, so notice how I'm walking the shape along here. So I'm just kind of welding this on in little pieces, little bits, one step at a time. Okay, awesome. That worked out really well. Just going to try and fare this off at the rake of the transom. This would probably be easier to do in wood at this point doing this stuff. Let me see if I can get a plane to do this. Not too bad. Okay, good. So there's our bare bones. The curve is down the other edge because the cardboard being stiff. Yes, yes, exactly. So I'm just projecting. This cardboard is allowing me to project the curve that I've drawn out to this edge, and that's my goal, to try and get that out there. So for this portion of the build, using quite stiff cardboard is what you want. Now when I do the planking, I'm going to be using much lighter, like poster board cardstock. Ideally this would be heavier than it is. Probably I'd prefer it to be like twice the thickness, but that's what I have on hand. Okay, so now where's my other cross section in the middle? So when I did it the other day, this worked really well. So we're going to cut this out. I need to make a little bit of an allowance for the thickness of the cardstock. See how thick is that stuff? Yeah, that's about right. Actually, I want to take this one right across. To this angle because I'm going to keep using it. Okay, so I want to keep this. That's my bulwark angle on this little piece of stock here. Ships. Okay, why is that wider? Where did I measure that from? I'm wider than I should be there. That's okay. We will make adjustments. What did I do? Did I scale? I scaled. Did I scale the beam off that? I thought I scaled the beam off this. Didn't I? I went midships. Ah. Is that it? I must have picked up the wrong dimension. Okay, no matter. That's not a problem. So what we're going to do is we'll just start with this one. Mark that. Just a little model making tip is if you look at my square here, you'll see I've got like about a bazillion marks drawn on it from doing other modeling projects where I'm taking sort of commonly used dimensions and marking them right on the square. But it also allows you to sort of square off something small without working from an edge, because that can be a pain. So I could move that up a little ways and square it off in the middle. All right. We have recovered. So we've done that. I'm going to do the same lower down. Obviously, I need to let's do this. Let's be smart. We're going to lay this off again. That's my height. That's going to be my chine. And that's going to be my end. So what I've done, let me show you what I'm doing here. So you can see how I've marked those little lines on there. Ignore this little line right there. That's garbage. So I've marked out where my keel is and where my next chine line is. Then I've marked off what my beam is. Okay, so I'm just going to take those same angles that I've got there and I'm going to carry those over. So I need to bring that chine across. Here's my bottom. So here's the chine. And then bring that over. There we go. I think I got a much more radical angle on this this planking below the major chine. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I'm just going to go with it. A little bit long. Chill. Okay, so one thing I'd like to do is hang on to this angle right here for future reference. So let me just grab that. So we're just gonna hang on to this one. Chine. And the bottom one, do I even need it? I don't think I need it, but maybe I'll save it anyway. How am I gonna do that? I got no good way to do that. I think we can do without it. All right. Glue. Glue, 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 glue. Glue, 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 glue. Spritz. Okay, so there we go. So now you can see how we're building up these forms, right? So there's that was our lower chine line, and that's projected up to that corner. Projected that corner up, projected that corner up. So I could have made another one of these that followed this shape, but I didn't know what that shape would be because it's so tucked in here, and it's going to change throughout its length. So for that reason, I've decided to go with this little bulkhead methodology. So now I've got to make some more bulkheads. So let's see. Grab our stock here. So this is where we're going to start working through all this. All this stock that we have here. This is where you almost want to be on my side of the. See if I can do it backwards for you. Shall we go? Rubbery goo. So again, I'm going to pick up that dimension and that dimension and that dimension. I've just come over to the next station, right? So I got one station, two stations. I do have a feeling that my here's my angle for that chine. So I'm just going to follow the same chine angle for the moment, I think. We bring that over. So that's there. And then we connect the dots between these last two. I have a funny feeling that this chine angle I have, this major chine angle, is going to throw me for a loop by the time I get to as I move forward, because I have a something that's a bit of a hard stop. I haven't thought about how I'm going to resolve that yet. We'll figure that out in a second. I feel like Adam Savage here. Okay, I think I'm gonna work backwards because that is a little easier to rationalize in my head. I'm doing the same thing now. Working the keel. Working the chine. Working the half breadth. Oh, I didn't do my that is not a bad man to be compared to, Adam Savage. Well, I would agree. I'd love to meet that guy. I'd love to build something with that guy. I'm sure I could sit there and while away a few hours just chit-chatting with him, but ultimately I'd be more interested in just building something, having something to do, get a lot more said that was worthwhile while working on a project. set that one off at a bit of a wacky angle. Okay. Now I wish I could sort of just jump ahead, but that's the way it goes when you're kind of doing stuff live, right? I can't. It's not a cooking show. I don't have that luxury. Just slowly whittling away at all my square corners here, though. All right. Now the downside to this method I'm using is when I'm done, I don't have a drawing to follow because I didn't do a drawing initially that didn't end up in the model. So if you wanted to continue on and build the thing, you'd have to kind of work backwards, I guess. But I mean, if you wanted to do it for real, then you would sit down and you'd start drawing properly and figuring it out from there. This is an ideation method that is, well, it's a way of exploring what's going to happen in real life as you build that you cannot easily anticipate on paper necessarily without a lot of hands-on experience. And that's kind of why I'm using this method. I mean, I've got a fair bit of hands-on experience, but not necessarily building this style of boat. And I quite like this real tumble home on the bulwarks. It's something that really speaks to me personally. Don't know why that is. It just appeals to me. I mean, my family's Dutch too, so it could just be that I'm got a bit of genetically disposed to thinking it's an interesting shape. Oh, that's easier. That's faster. We have to employ that some more. Get out an even bigger, wider chisel, I think. So I really like the geometry of chine boats. I think there's something kind of intriguing about it and fun about it. I've been reading a book about Japanese boat building by Douglas Brooks. If you've never heard of him, he's an American who's been going and trying to doing his bit to try and revive the art of boat building in Japan. And he's met with some fairly substantial success in that department. About to do the transom here. The transom I'm going to lay it right across the back as opposed to adding it as an interior component. So there's my bulwark. And height there. So my true height ought to be higher. I'm just going to sketch this in, and then we'll give it a little outboard notch. And we have the chine rake. And then chine projection. So what's kind of cool about the Japanese boats is they don't have any of the internal framing that we associate with boat building in the West. They just basically have really big, heavy planks, like twice the thickness of our planks, all nailed together in various configurations. Sometimes it's clench nailed, sometimes it's just blind edge nailed. They use chisels to bore a hole for these nails, and the nails they're like a bit like a cut nail, but they're big. Maybe like 4 or 6 inches long or longer. And then they have the head offset to one side. So they're usually they do use some copper nails, but they're mostly either steel, galvanized, although in the old days they would not have been galvanized, obviously. And so you have a chisel that matches the nail size and shape. Special chisel, I think it's called a Tsubanomi, something like that. I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, but and all the planking is fitted using a technique called what is it? Surulwasi. Again, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's pretty interesting stuff. So I've just ordered I just contacted Brooks and asked him about getting my hands on the boat builder saws there, which are particular for doing that. They're a tapered blade. They're a rip saw, but he did say you can use any rip saw for doing that. So I've asked him to get me a proper one from Japan when he next goes over there. And but in the meantime, I've ordered up just a ripping blade from Lee Valley to practice with. Japanese saw, obviously. Okay, so there's a transom. So I want to play around with these techniques, and I've got sort of a project I've been wanting to do for myself, which is just like a sampan for use at my cottage. I'm using sampan in the most generic terms. Trim that back a hair. Okay, so you can see how that's coming together now, eh? Now, just a minor detail, because the transom is raked, it's raked backwards, right? So this shape, these shapes we've created here are now, they change a little bit. I'm not sure, let's see if we can get the camera to see that. You can, because this is now raked back, it goes, it tucks in a little bit, just a tiny bit more, which is not a bad thing. But if you wanted to make that the same angle, you'd have to do a bit of projection to make that the same. Just fair those in a hair. Okay, cool. How long have we been going here? I have no idea. Oh my God, 75 minutes. Good on you for sticking around with me. Yeah, these self-healing mats, I love these. Oh, my workbench is carved absolutely completely covered in score marks from not using a mat. That's a workbench. It's not meant to be fine furniture. So let's see, what are we going to do here? I'm going to start by making some rectangles that match these spaces. We're going to Gonna be some fresh territory, folks. What I'm about to do I haven't done before. I have no idea how it's gonna go here. What I want to do is try and project what this shape might be as it comes around. So far I've just been letting the angles that I've established dictate those things. And I'm about to change that. Make it, ooh, just. That's ratty. We can do this nicer. Okay, so square. Yeah. All right. So what I want to do is just pick up this for the moment. That height. And sorry, I've got to turn it to my view for a second. That height. Another great material for doing this stuff is aircraft plywood. So you can get that in different thicknesses. 1/16 of an inch or even less. I've got some on hand, but it's kind of pricey. All right, so what I want to do, I think, I'm just going to start by marking this chine on here. So there's the chine. And I'm going to mark what the theoretical break of that thing is there. Can I get away with one more? So what I'm wondering about is whether or not as this line comes, this line has to land here. And so these relationships are going to start to change quite radically. And so I'm debating if I put this in here now, whether or not I should be projecting how this is going to come out. You know what? Let's try. Right now I'm wishing I had a really flexible version of this. Do not want to break this. Do not want to break this. That would be bad. bad. Because this video is running long, so I don't think we'll finish the whole model, but what I think we'll do is we'll take it so far. Maybe we'll come back and do another one, finish it up on another weekend, because I have not been taking time to do some proper editing. Okay, so that. So there's that, and this guy. What I'm trying to find now is this. Oh, up there. This guy. But I want it to be a sort of a sleeker entry. Okay, stare at this for a moment. I'll be right back. All right. I was hoping I would find a really light piece of wire, but I don't. So here, let's see. Let me just, I want to compare this to what a batten will tell me looks good. So let me just clamp that on. And try and find a way for you to see what I'm doing. And so there's my point right there. I can barely see where these corners are. Okay, so according to that batten, I need something that's a little more, I don't know. A little more like this, maybe? Can you guys see that? No, I didn't even come anywhere close to where it's. Come on, Mark. What the hell? Nowhere close. So this is where if you're lofting, the lofting would be telling you what to do. And I'm a little bit restricted in the fact that I'm using this French curve, right? So it doesn't have the ability to give me every single potential curve that I might want. I think that's it. I'm going to cut that out. All right. So can you see that? Now, if you were lofting, you would be eyeballing. You'd be drawing out that curve and then drawing out that curve in this view and kind of guessing at whether or not they're right. Now, I don't know if they're right, but what I'm going to do is just draw that down. We're going to use that to lay out our bulkheads. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, so this is where the angles start to change, as I expected. I'm going to draw that in red so you can see the difference between letting the angle dictate where we're going and letting a ferred line. It's not very ferred, but can you see that? Can you see the difference? So on the outside are the original lines. See how they project out quite a bit more, an extra inch or so. And then using the batten, we've brought that inboard a little bit. So cut that out. So much easier. Why I've never thought to do that before. That's almost revolutionary. Okay. Okay, so there's one. Do another one. Chine and chine. So what I've done there? Yeah. Is that right? Guess so. All right. Well, this shape is going very differently than the last one. I don't know that this is. I'm beginning to get the feeling I might have gone down the wrong road with my initial angle on the bottom. Should have been not quite so acute. But that's okay. As I said, this is all about learning. And now we're going to need one more in here because this is such an extreme shape. If you don't put something in, it's never going to work out for you. So let's see. We'll just do sort of an eyeball. Actually, here's what we can do here. This is fun. Do a cant frame. So that cant frame is going to come down to there. That's our and that. This is, if nothing else, this is a great exercise to really get to learn about the projection of lines and how they intersect. And how cross sections through different areas work. So I remember when I was lofting, learning how to loft the very first time, the first, I think it was the first boat, the second boat I lofted. It was a Poles bow boat. It was a boat building school, and I got done earlier than the other kids. And so my instructor said, okay, well, how about you throw a cant frame in? And I was like, huh? How on earth do I do that? And so he kind of gave me a basic idea of how you can now project a different line through your drawing and pick up some fresh information. So here's a great example. So this cant frame, see how quickly I did that? So what I did was I just established what plane I want this to come through. So I just drew a line in there, okay, and I let it project square across because I was using square stock. But if I wanted to follow this line, I would have had to just pick up an angle in there. And then with that line, I just projected down to pick up that chine, and projected out to pick up that chine. Now, technically, that's probably not quite right because I'll bet it needs to be lower. In fact, yeah, it probably needs to be. Because this is now out in space, what I should have done is I'll show you exactly what I should have done. So where that hits, where this line, this cant frame hits our drawn chine line on here, I should have projected it out and then down to there, and then that's the height I should have picked up for this, which it looks like it's just a little bit higher. So let's see if I can't, if it's a little bit higher there, then this guy needs to come in too. So let's see, can we do this without slicing our wrists? Yeah. Just a little bit of a difference. Now, another thing I should point out, because if we were working in plywood, when you bend plywood, when you force plywood into sort of a compound twist, it will become conical. And so as you bring plywood around and you want to start winding it around, more often than not, if you try and make the surfaces it's got to wind over flat, you're going to be fighting it to get in there. You actually have to give it a little bit of a make the surface you're trying to land it on convex by just a little bit. And there is actually a graphic way of working all that out, which is incredibly involved, called conical projection. But you can, in small boats, you would just eyeball it. If you're doing like a big boat, like a steel hull boat or something, you would probably not eyeball it. Okay, so there we go. Cool, eh? All right. That's right. And let's see. Now Jacob has been chit-chattering, and Bob, where will the hamsters sit? Bob, you cheeky. Okay, Bob. I've got a little ceramic version of you here. My daughter made this. It's like a amoebic Trump. Weird. Anyway, can you make you can make the station frames with only the hull angle, and later scribe with the stick the chine curve on it, and then cut the model the other angle option. I don't quite understand what you're saying there exactly, Jacob, but yes, I think I get that. But yes, the angle of the bottom does change. So if I had if you kept that same angle, you would simply lose your options as to where this ended up, I think, is how that would work. But I know I wanted to hit that point. Anyhow, so let's make a quick plank on here. All right, so the planking part. We can do this fairly quickly, I think. All right, I'm going to just lob this down a little smaller. Bob mentions the term tortured plywood. Yes, that's exactly what tortured plywood is. That's when you're trying to force the fact that it wants to be conical as you bend it, and you don't let it do that. You're basically torturing it into an unnatural form, which can only work so far, and then it's going to come back to bite you as you try and force it to take shapes that are not right. You can end up building some wacky unfairness into it. All right, so I'm just taking a piece of cardstock here, and I'm going to lay it. I'm going to try and, okay, we're going to do it this way. Put a few bits of tape on. For those of you who haven't seen this orange masking tape before, it's something that's sold in the Luthier supplies, or it's Stuart McDonald specifically, which is like the Lee Valley of Luthier supplies, and it works really nice. It's got a nice strength to it, just about the right amount of tack to use it for holding things in place without tearing the finish off. Okay, so this gets trickier because I can't see inside easily, so as I wrap this around, it's able to follow a center line because we're pretty straight. But then as you wrap up the bow, obviously, it starts to curve inward. So what I want to do is just mark off all of my termination points for this. Let's give myself a little bit more room at the transom. And I need slightly stronger glasses for half of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to walk this back because I can't see what I'm doing otherwise. This is where if you're doing the real thing, you might spile for it, or you'd crawl inside your mold, wrap your plywood around it, crawl inside, or make a pattern of some sort. So I'm kind of, this isn't going to have the most perfect lines because this is so hard to work at this scale in this confined configuration. Yeah. Okay, so now if this was the real thing, I would be bending a batten around it. Okay, we got a weird, what is going on there? What is going on there? Just noticed a very oddball dimension. It's hard to see exactly where this ought to be. That looks better. Okay. And just like in real life, it's when your lines aren't fitting properly, that's a sign that you've maybe done something quite wrong. If your marks all line up, it's all probably pretty good. If something doesn't quite line up, something falls out of the ordinary, you go back and check. Now I can't be very accurate with these lines, so there's a big fudge factor happening with me right now. And one of my marks here is way out of whack. And I don't know what we're going to do. I'm going to fare right on through it and see what it looks like. Okay. Just leave my transom one long for the moment. Try tipping that on a bit better. You can see one of my bulkheads here is a little bit shy. The lines don't quite jive up, which might mean the next one is just a bit too strong. So if I wanted to try and fix that, I might ferre that out. I'm going to call that good enough and go ahead and glue this on. Although, you know, you know, I'm not going to glue it on for now. So here's the interesting thing. So if you're doing a stitch and glue boat, or if you wanted to create a stitch and glue boat, you could actually do exactly what I've done here, is built this, a plug like this, just out of temporary materials. Spile for your panels, right? We do the same thing for the next one, right? And then you can glue those together. Stitch those together. So let's try spiling this next one here. So if I were inclined to do stitch and glue design, I would probably do something like and I wanted to get like the shapes really right. Now, of course, I'm sure there's computer software that will do this for you. But who wants to sit in front of a computer all day long, eh? The hardest part about this is trying to hang on to it, because I can't clamp anything. It wants to shoogle around on me. Come on, stop. No shoogling. I'm walking this down. All right, I'm gonna cut that out, and then we'll take that in place so I can do the rest of it a bit better. Of course, because we're working at scale, very hard to get everything super fair. Well, hard to get it super fair when you're working with janky plywood or janky cereal boxes. Okay, now we're going to try and pick up the inside. Stick that on. If I keep falling out of the camera frame, I apologize. It's struggling to see what I'm doing half the time here. Okay, so now I'm going to reach in there and attempt, let's see, point there, attempt to mark my intersections. So Bob there says Great point about generating an analog stitch and glue design. Has me thinking. That's right, Bob. Because I know you're like me. Kind of a complete Luddite. Probably still getting your kids to program your digital alarm clock. A little further, maybe. All right, let's see how this looks. Didn't get my last point. Just like before, this last bit is a real banana. And my points are not jiving beautifully well. I'm gonna fudge something through and we'll see what it looks like. But you can see that banana shape on there. Something's not right. I just don't know what it is. But this is not a bad way to make it right. Going through a process like this and then figuring out how to fudge it all together. All right. Let's see, how's that look? Stick that on there. Not terrible. Okay, so here's the cool bit. Here's the cool bit. If we were to take these two things, let's just lose all these bits of tape. All right, and stitch. Stitch. Now the secret to stitching glue is making sure all these lines are super fair. And I'm not a fan of stitching glue. I mean, it's okay, but it's just never been my thing. I don't like the mushy shine shapes. And all the filleting and stuff, I find it irritating. But stitching glue is good because if you've got your panel shapes, you don't need to build a mold, right? So it's a very direct, low, waste-free way of constructing something. So check that out. Okay. There's our bottom right there. See how that drops on. How that drops on. So what it doesn't like our shape up forward. What it would want is one of these to be more curved, or both of them to be a little more curved. To get that shape, if I bring those together more. So I overlap those a little bit. And so that, in theory, should bring that curve up more. No, that brought it down. So what that means is that upper one probably needs to be less curved. to bring it up. Let's try that. This is an excellent exercise in how curves relate. Do the same thing. Can't quite tell. Well, it could be if you had the third component on, the bulwark component, that would probably bring it around a lot more and help hold that shape. I mean, as it is, it's the two components are struggling a little bit because they want to just spring, because it's a lot of twist going on here. But in general, that's how she goes. So that's fairly interesting. I think I'll just leave it at that. And as you can imagine, we would fill in the blank, fill in the deck the same way, doing more bulkheads. And then, of course, just like I did with this one, I threw a cant frame in. And the main reason to do a cant frame and not run it parallel is because the angle is becoming so acute here that you're going to get, if you're trying to build the boat and you wanted to bend this heavy plank around here, for instance, you wouldn't want this frame coming out at this acute angle. You'd want it to be square to that bend for greatest support. So that's a fun little exercise. So I don't know, I hope that was interesting to all you folks out there. I had fun. I certainly learned a few things. About this. Maybe we'll you know, another thing you can do if you wanted to start from scratch is do this in a solid model form. So I don't know if any of you watched my my model making series that had me doing my forest and stream skiff. And in that series, I started out, actually, let me go grab them and I'll just walk you through that real quick. There they are. Too many models. Don't need that one. Don't need that one. That's the sampan idea. I was playing around with that last summer or the summer before. So in this exercise, I started out by taking a drawing and just literally cutting out the panel shapes and then gluing them together, but they weren't expanded panels. It was just like the profile drawing, but when you bend it around into a shape, it changes the attitude of that shape. So that doesn't change so much, but in profile, it's going to pull it into more of a banana. And so properly expanded, let's see if that shows. You can see this one where it's been built on a mold is more correct. The panels haven't been trimmed down on this, so this is just an example. I do believe I did this one is expanded, but I think I went from this to this. So this was a solid wood form, but here you go. Took a block of wood, glued on the deck, glued on the bottom, glued on the profile, sawn away, chopped away everything that didn't match those things. There's a little bit of parallax error because of this deck shape goes from flat to suddenly being whoop, so it grows a little tiny bit. But then from that model, I actually wrapped paper around it or card around it and expanded the panel shapes to get that. Then went on to do a more, wood model of it. But in this case, I was playing around with whether or not I could get away with just sort of a single mold in the middle, and I found it wanted to pinch in too much at the end. So then I went with, okay, we need proper molds filling out that shape, and not sure if you can see the difference very easily. If you can look straight on. Nah, it's too hard to see. Too hard to see in the picture, but this one's is a lot fuller in the bows than this one is. But it was a great little exercise, and not too dissimilar from what we're doing here in the idea of taking one form and expanding upon it, build it different ways. And this is kind of a neat shape unto itself. I mean, it is so similar to some of the Dutch working boats. Grab that book. So this is the only book I found on the subject. Rond en plat bodem jagen. And it's all in Dutch, so I don't read it. I can read through Dutch and pick out a word or two here or there, but I do not speak it. But it's got some very cool designs in there. Let's see if we can find a picture that's representative of what we're doing here a little bit. Oh, there's a little tiny picture, so you can see that right there, and how similar our boat is in a way to that particular one. Or if we look at any of these guys that sort of very bluff bowed. But these ones, this particular example has a flat raked bow, but some of them are rounder. The butter yachts and such. Anyway, so there's the inspiration for that. They do these in steel too, like beautiful, smooth-skinned steel hulls. They're just, the level of craftsmanship of these boats in Holland done in both wood and steel is astounding. And the fact that you can get steel to take these shapes, and you know, it's just amazing. The woodwork they do there is fantastic too. And Jacob says they still build from the original mold. Jacob, are you in Holland? You seem to be piping up with knowledge on the subject. Oh, yes, he is. Where are you at, Jacob? What part of Holland? There's a little lag, time lag. Dutch is a difficult Alkmaar, about an hour north of Amsterdam. Yeah, okay. So you probably are well familiar with Enkhuizen, which is by far one of my favorite little spots. And close to there is also Volendam and stuff, I think, right? It's a great little historic village. I think it's in Enkhuizen, if I'm not mistaken. Jacob, you could probably tell me if I'm wrong. Where they've got buildings all maintained in historically accurate. They make their own paints and stuff like that to maintain the buildings, and they've got their own little shipyard and little marina. And when I was last there, I lucked out, and they brought me into their shipyard building where they're building a new butter yacht, which is very cool to see. So yeah, if you're in Northern Europe, go check out Holland. Go check out Enkhuizen, very old city. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's got some of the most canals of all of the cities in Holland, or is that Volendam? I don't remember. I believe Volendam is where everybody's dressed in period dress around town a lot of the time too. I mean, it's for tourists and stuff like that, but it's kind of cool that they maintain that in their day-to-day lives. Anyhow, so I'm going to wrap that up here. So thank you for joining me, and yeah, I think we'll leave that as it is. I think it's kind of it was a cool little experiment, good way to whittle away a couple hours. And there's a comparison from first example to the second example. Very different. You know what's interesting? I mean, it's just going by eye, how much more similar our newer one is to the earlier version that I took off of an actual boat, or sort of fudged it off of an actual boat. I would love to build this boat. Jacob, if you find yourself in Enkhuizen, pop into the museum, and there are two boats like this. One of them is smooth skinned. It's Carvel built, and it's all fancy schmancy, kind of royal yachty, lots of carvings and a lion's head thing on it and stuff like that. That's not as interesting to me as the one that is just oak lapstrake planking. Get me many shots of it so that I can get a more accurate representation. And if you could pull a couple of dimensions off of there too, I would really love that. So not putting the pressure on you, but should you find yourself in the neighborhood and you got the time and you have the interest, that would be great. Be a cool thing to play around with. Okay, folks, I'm going to sign off. I got more vacation time to fill out with sitting on my arse and twiddling my thumbs. Okay, Ed, I'll see you later on. And Jacob's going to Denmark. Ooh, nice. I'd like to go there too. Got my friend Mikkel over in Denmark. I was thinking about actually taking a trip over to Denmark and hanging out with Mikkel, and because he's just moving onto a new property, has to set up his shop. I'd love to just hang out with him for a month or something like that, just help him try and set the shop up. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Unlikely, but it'd be fun. Okay, for the 10th time, see you later. Now I gotta figure out how to get out of this. How do you end alive? No idea. No idea. Nah. Nope. Close. Okay.